Hello guys, I am Bea Reca Fernandez that will be presenting the Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution, in the beginning of modern science and technology. The Enlightenment, a period during the 16th and 17th century in which educated Europeans changed their outlook on life by seeing reason as the key to human progress. In its early phase, known as the Scientific Revolution, new scientists believed that rational, empirical observation and the examination of human life could unveil the truth behind society and the self, as well as the universe. In the later phase, known as the Enlightenment, the philosophers expanded on this worldview to argue that there could be academic disciplines known as social sciences, which would focus on all activities of humans, so that human life and society, in general, could be changed for the better. When and where did the Enlightenment take place? Historians place the Enlightenment in Europe, with a strong emphasis on France, during the late 17th and the 18th centuries, or, more comprehensively, between the Glorious Revolution in 1688 and the French Revolution of 1789. It represents a phase in the intellectual history of Europe and also programs of reform, inspired by a belief in the possibility of a better world, that outlined specific targets for criticism and programs of action. Enlightenment thinkers. The driving force behind the Enlightenment was a comparatively small group of writers and thinkers from across Europe and North America who became known as the philosophers, which is French for philosophers. Thomas Hobbes believes that humans are naturally selfish, cruel, and greedy. In 1651 he published a book called Leviathan. He wrote that people are driven by a restless desire for power. He argued that human nature was inherently bad and that humans would remain in a constant state of war, vying for power and material resources, unless kept in check by an absolute ruler. He was of the opinion that human life is, by nature, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short, and was pessimistic about the prospects for progress. In terms of the theory of government, Hobbes contended that whenever people assume high political office, they will be inclined to abuse their position. Therefore, Hobbes believed a single absolute ruler is better than an oligarchy, a small group of people having control over a country, or democracy, because an absolute sovereign's main duty is to provide stability for the society, and if he fails at that task, people will replace the ruler with another. John Locke, in his essay concerning human understanding, 1690, Locke presents his idea that man's mind is a tabula rasa, blank slate, and that all humans can improve through conscious effort. In Locke's best-known work, Two Treatises of Government, 1690, he builds on his optimistic belief that every man is inherently good. Locke believed in the necessity of government, and he says that people must compromise on some issues for the betterment of the whole. This becomes the foundation for our idea of a representative government and what would be the structure known as the separation of powers, the system that the Founding Fathers of United States used when writing the U.S. Constitution. Montesquieu, like Locke, he was concerned with how to protect liberty from a bad government. He wrote The Spirit of Law in 1748. In this book he described how government should be organized. His idea, the separation of powers. By dividing different powers among more than one branch of government, no one group in the government could grow too powerful. Voltaire was an Enlightenment writer. Voltaire was especially concerned with freedom of thought and expression. His idea, he had a strong belief in religious tolerance and free speech. Tolerance means the acceptance of different beliefs and customs. His works, especially private letters, frequently contain the word l'infâme and the expression écraser l'infâme, or crush the infamous. The phrase refers to abuses of the people by royalty and the clergy that Voltaire saw around him, and the superstition and intolerance that the clergy bred within the people. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he was a believer in the moral superiority of the patriarchal family on the antique Roman model. To him, ideal woman is educated to be governed by her husband, while ideal man is educated to be self-governing. He theorized the best way to establish a political community in the face of the problems of commercial society. The work helped inspire political reforms and revolutions in Europe. It argued against the idea that monarchs were divinely empowered to legislate. Rousseau asserts that only the people, who are sovereign, have that all-powerful right. Cesar Beccaria. In Middle Ages, torture of criminals was common. The rack was often used, as well as devices like thumbscrews. Wrote a book called On Crimes and Punishment, in which he argued against brutal punishment. His idea: a person accused of crime should receive a fair and speedy trial. Torture should never be used, death sentence should be done away with. Impact of the Enlightenment on government. Enlightenment thinkers criticized accepted ideas about government. Some questioned the medieval belief in the divine right of kings, the idea that God chose country king and that the king and got his authority from God. Modern views of government owe a great deal to Enlightenment thinkers. The Enlightenment influenced monarchs in Europe, especially enlightened despot, and greatly affected revolutions in America and France. Enlightenment rule by monarchs, despots, a king or other ruler with absolute, unlimited power. The Enlightenment did not change Europe overnight. Many countries still had kings. Some of them became enlightened despots by using enlightened ideas in their countries. Example: some kings ended the use of torture, started universities, and used religious tolerance. They wanted to keep the people happy without losing their power. The American and French Revolution. Both America and France had revolutions overthrowing their kings. However, the revolution in France was much more violent. The Enlightenment in America. Enlightenment ideas had a major influence on the leaders of the American Revolution. English leaders in America shared with John Locke the traditions of Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights guarantees civil rights and liberties to individual like freedom of speech, press, and religion. It set rules for due process of law and reserved all powers not delegated to the federal government to the people or to the states. Magna Carta, which means the Great Charter, is one of the most important documents in history as it established the principles that everyone is subject to law, even the king, and guarantees the rights of individuals and rights of justice and right to a fair trial. Enlightenment in France. In 1789, revolution broke out in France. The National Assembly adopted the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. This document talked about liberty and equalities, upheld the rights to own property and freedom of speech and religion. However, terrible violence erupted. Thousands of wealthy French men and members of royal family were beheaded on the guillotine, a machine that cut off people's head by dropping a sharp blade. Women of the Enlightenment. Oftentimes women were perceived as the caretakers of the household and mothers of children in the family. With Enlightenment thinking, women began to develop a new intellect. By combining the ideas that were created in the public sector to those more traditional domestic private affairs, such as hosting salons in their houses. Out of the salons, women were able to obtain knowledge and gain literary support. Because of these gatherings, women were able to think critically, participate and contribute in society in many ways rather than becoming caretakers of the households. Olympe de Gouges. She published the female version of the document of the French Revolution. She called it the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen. She called for equality in all things. When she spoke up against the bloodshed of the French Revolution, they sent her to the guillotine. Abigail Adams, wife of John Adams, who was a leader of the American Revolution and later president. She reminded John not to forget women in the Revolution. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to start a rebellion. We will not hold ourselves bound to any laws in which we have no voice. Mary Wollstonecraft. In 1792 she argued that women deserved the same rights and opportunities as men. Believed that education was the key for women wanting equality and freedom. She inspired many later leaders of the women's against movement in America. What were the most important ideas of the Enlightenment? It was thought during the Enlightenment that human reasoning could discover truths about the world, religion, and politics and could be used to improve the lives of humankind. Skepticism about received wisdom was another important idea. Everything was to be subjected to testing and rational analysis. Religious tolerance and the idea that individuals should be free from coercion in their personal lives and consciences were also Enlightenment ideas. The term Industrial Revolution is a succinct catchphrase to describe a historical period, starting in 18th century Great Britain, where the pace of change appeared to speed up. This acceleration in the processes of technical innovation brought about an array of new tools and machines. It also involved more subtle practical improvements in various fields affecting labor, production, and resource use. It took place in Britain because it had a natural resources like coal, iron ore, developed farmlands and stable population growth due to boosting agricultural system, and then subsequently spreads throughout Europe, North America, and eventually the world. Causes of Industrial Revolution. There are many major factors that contributed to increase the quality of human, to make technological advancement led to the causes of Industrial Revolution. There are three most important causes of Industrial Revolution. First is the dependency on technology. This trend started with the Renaissance and increased with the scientific revolution. Technology in this context means scientific way of thinking that took birth of the concept of Industrial Revolution. Second is the impact of education. Before Industrial Revolution, a little attention was paid towards raising the level of, but with the period of Renaissance lead more individual to be educated. And this educated class was the reason to form up Industrial Revolution and create new inventions. Lastly, a reformed names as the Protestant Reformation. This reform was against the interest of Protestant because it weakened on lending money, for example, and helped to develop capitalism. New invention of Industrial Revolution. Industrialization marked a shift to powered, special-purpose machines, factories, and mass production. The iron and textile industries, along with the development of the steam engine, played central role in the Industrial Revolution, which also improved system of transportation, communication, and banking. This brought an increased volume and capacity of manufacturing goods and improved standard of living. This invention in technology leads in boosting all the sectors of manufacturing. This may be seen in the steam, agricultural, textile, transport, medicine, and mining sector that marked a revolutionary change in history. Steam engine. Steam power was fueled by coal. Utilization of water wheels and power machinery underpinned the increases in production capacity. Development of all metal machine tools in the first 2 decades of the 19th century facilitated the manufacture of production machines for manufacturing in other industries. These are some of the interventions. James Watt. Steam engines. Factory owners needed a way to efficiently and cheaply produce the energy needed to power industry. James Watt had the answer. He introduced the first steam engine that paved for Industrial Revolution. But this engines required a lots of fuel in order to operate, and this made using the engines very expensive. A more cost-effective engine was required to make it use wide. Stephenson's locomotive. This locomotive's named was Butcher that drug 30 tons of materials till 4 miles. Every part of the engine had to be made by hand, and hammer into shave just like horse's hoe. Robert Fulton's steamboat. Fulton's steamboat was the first to become a practical, financial, and commercially successful steamboat. This steamboat was named as Claremont. Fulton made many important contributions to the development of naval warfare, the submarine, the technology of mine warfare, the design and construction of the first steam-powered warship. Agricultural sector advancement seen in farming, which was absolutely vital in order to maintain and feed the rapidly growing population. New tools and processes were developed to ensure that less people were needed to grow ever-increasing amounts of food. Progress was also made in crop rotation and land use, soil health, development of new crop varieties, and animal husbandry. Some inventions are: first was the invention of Jethro Tull. He invented a seed drill which could be pulled behind a horse. It consisted of wheeled vehicles containing a box filled with grains. A seed drill sowed seeds that exactly positions the seed in the soil and cover them. It would seed in uniform rows repeatedly instead of the wasteful method of scattering seeds. The result was a sustained increase in yields, capable of feeding a rapidly growing population with improved nutrition. Second, Lord Townshend inventions. He divided his fields up into 4 different types of produce, with wheat in the first field, clover or ryegrass in the second, oats or barley the third, and, in the fourth, turnips or swedes. Using this system, he found that he could grow more crops and get a better yield from the land. If a crop was not rotated, then the nutrient level in the field would go down with time. The yield of the crop from the field decreased. Using the 4-field system, the land could not only be rested, but also could be improved by growing other crops. Textile sector. The production of fabrics, especially cotton, was fundamental to Britain's economic development between 1750 and 1850. Those are the years historians commonly use to bracket the Industrial Revolution. In this period, the organization of cotton production shifted from a small-scale cottage industry, in which rural families performed spinning and weaving tasks in their homes, to a large, mechanized, factory-based industry. John K. Flying Shuttle. In 1733, he developed a wheel shuttle, later known as a flying shuttle. The flying shuttle was used with the traditional hand loom and helped improve weaving efficiency and reduced labor needs because it could be operated with only one operator. Eli Whitney cotton gin, a machine that revolutionized the production of cotton by greatly speeding up the process of removing seeds from cotton fiber. It helps planters earn greater profits, promoting them to grow larger crops, which in turn required more people. Spinning. Jenny Hargreaves' thought of creating a spinning machine happened when his daughter accidentally overturned his spinning machine. He observed how the spindle kept revolving in an upright rather than horizontal position, and that therefore, he came up with the idea of spinning several threads at one time. People were not happy with the mechanization of spinning and thought that such mechanization was bound to destroy their earnings and lives. People therefore rioted, and those who had bought spinning jennies were obliged to hide and preserve their machines in order to not have them destroyed. Transport sector. Concurrent with the increased output of agricultural produce and manufactured goods arose the need for more efficient means of delivering these products to market. The first efforts toward this end in Europe involved constructing improved overland roads. Canals were dug in both Europe and North America to create maritime corridors between existing waterways. Some inventions are Stephenson's rocket. It was designed and built by George Stephenson with the help of his son, Robert, and Henry Booth. The rocket reached speeds of 24 miles per hour during the 20 laps of the course. It was the first locomotive to have a multi-boiler with 25 copper tubes rather than a single flue or twin flue. Ford invented the assembly line at his automobile company. The assembly line reduced production time. More cars were made available for a lower cost, making the car most common. Wright brothers. In 1896, the newspapers were filled with accounts of flying machines. Wilbur and Orville noticed that all these primitive aircraft lacked suitable controls. They began to wonder how a pilot might balance an aircraft in the air, just as a cyclist balances his bicycle on the road. In 1899, Wilbur devised a simple system that twisted or warped the wings of a biplane, causing it to roll right or left. They tested this system in a kite, then a series of gliders. Medicine sector. There are many medical advances that occurred during the Industrial Revolution. Some of this advancement are included smallpox vaccination, discovery of anesthetic, discovery of X-ray, invention of aspirin and blood transfusion. Pasteur germ theory. This theory proved that germs causes disease. Before he made this discovery, doctors had noticed bacteria, but they believed it was the disease that causes the bacteria rather than the other way around. Jenner subsequently proved that having been inoculated with cowpox, was immune to smallpox. The advantages of vaccination invention by Jenner led to protection that worn out. Impact of Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution consisted both positive and negative aspects that impacted the economy and the people. Positive outcome. This may be seen in the infrastructure as the buildings and factories were constructed with modern technique. Example, the building accommodated homeless people with shelter and built churches and architecture with a modern design. This may also be seen in modern invention. It increased the standard of living by maintaining well-being. The inventions caused advancements in technology and science. For example, the telephone were invented which allowed people to communicate with each other. It also brought changes in the class structure around the world. People started making more money. This was because they are withdrawing away from the existing laws that forced some factory to pay a minimum wage. Next, it made changes to the improvement in education system. The government provided more financial support to schools for the large number of children working. Example, children received an education 2 hours a day. New technical schools was established that increased the ability of students to be more skilled workers. Negative effect. The most negative effect of Industrial Revolution was the work condition. The factory were dirty and dangerous. They didn't have any laws for the minimum wages and safety issues. Workers were paid low salaries that could barely cover up their cost of living. Sometimes the hours were long but were not permitted to breaks. This also leads to the concept of child labor. Children were given very low pay and work in very bad condition. They worked barefoot for 12 to 14 hours and were given no breaks. Example, in the coal mines children had to crawl through narrow underground passages as low as 16 to 18 inches in height. Effect was the pollution. Omizuran of harmful chemicals from factories were dumped into nearby rivers that caused marine pollution as well as air and noise pollution. Example, the smog in 1873 killed 700 people in London, and the large air pollution disaster in Britain was the Great London Smog in 1952, which approximately killed 4,000 people. It also leads to increase in population. Due to high fertility and high mortality rate, more babies were born. The death rate declined due to the advancement in medicines. Example, at the dawn of Industrial Revolution in the mid-1700s, the world population grew by about 57% to 700 million. It would reach 1 billion in 1800. Industrial Revolution today grew from the use of information and dominated by computers, both electromechanical and electronic, and eventually the Internet. The Internet is bringing a revolution. Along with Internet has become such an integral part of our lives, access in information and in communication. A whole new industry develops around information technology. Even if the said period of Industrial Revolution was in 18th to 19th century, scientists and philosophers argue that Industrial Revolution is still on a go.